All right, this is going to be the second game of the Ultimecia finals, the second match, Seto versus Midas. Seto has defeated Tezuka in 3 games and currently has the lead. If he wins this game, it is all over. However, if Midas beats Seto, then either Midas will be champion if he can also beat Tezuka, or the bracket will be reset if Tezuka beats Midas after that. So Midas is playing for both his and Tezuka's life in the tournament, while Seto is playing directly for the title. But if he loses, that could easily be it for him, right? If Midas goes on to beat Tezuka. On the other hand, Tezuka might then beat Midas, and it would be very exciting. And that would be pretty fun to see. Like if I was scripting this, I would have Midas win here, Tezuka beat Midas, and then something happen in the reset, right? Just to add a little chaos to the whole proceedings. Um, on the other hand, I have prepared what I want to talk about if Seto wins, because, I always like legacy discussions. So let's talk a little about the rule set before the game starts, because we might be sitting here a bit, in which case I'll pause and then we'll teleport forward in time. But the rule set's interesting. Level 1 through 10, same plus, same wall, plus wall combo, so all normal rules in effect, all decks, max of 1 card per level. Oh, totally missed that. Uh, my go-to game plan here is not in fact allowed. All right, tricky. Max of 1 card per level. Maximum level total is 30. So you have 5 cards to get to level 30. That's an average of level 6, but you can't run 5 level 6s because you read the rules, which I didn't, and you learned max of 1 card per level. So you could do something like 8-7-6-5-4, 10-8-6-4-2. Those are kind of natural ways to say 6 is the midpoint, and I'm going to take an equal distribution around it. In general, on this kind of rule set, I think usually the best play is to really polarize your hand. Have some low levels you can use early, and have some high levels for later sweeping. That essentially the cards you play later have higher impact on the game, and you want to split it up so those cards are just as powerful as possible. I'm sure there are some exact level setups where this is not quite the case. I ran some rules like this with level 3 through 6 and some total level count. And I think you basically wanted to get a lot of level 5s, not a lot of level 6s there. I can't speak, sorry, because level 5 just happens to be a really, really strong level and that plays well against level 6. And so you wanted to maximize level 5s there, was my belief. So my instinct was 10-10-8-1-1, but that's illegal. So my new instinct is 10-9-8-2-1. All right, the game has been taken. We can see it disappeared, but we'll keep talking a bit as we wait for them to select hands. I think 10-9-8-2-1 is both often the most powerful and gives you a game plan, right? You want to use your level 1 and 2 early if you're on first turn, right? Throwing your level 1 and 5 or in a weak corner. And then against most things they do, you should be able to use your level 2, right? Like, say you throw your level 1 and 5. Anywhere they go, you can kind of throw your level 2 opposite it, and your higher level cards should be really good at capturing the very low numbers, right? If you have last turn, you like seeing low numbers facing out, and you can produce a lot of low numbers very easily with your level 1 and level 2. Other people would think of them as they should be used to cover high numbers that I can't otherwise take, right? Run something like 2-2-4-4, something 2-2-3-3, something of that ilk that can cover 9s and 10s that your hand might not have an easy time capturing. I am skeptical of this because I think you usually don't want to hold on to your high levels that long. We didn't finish the rule set. Rare semis are allowed, hence we can see Hildebrand Manderville. I have said in the past that any rule set Hildebrand is allowed, it should be played, and not playing it is a mistake. I hadn't realized it was available, but this means I think Seto is correct, and not playing it is a mistake. And we can see if we look at the hands, they've done the 10-9-8-2-1 build, right? Midas, Uber is a level 10, 8-9-8-2 is a level 9, 9-5-2-9 is a level 8, 2-3-2-3 is a level 1, 3-3-4-4 is a level 2. On Seto's side, we have a level 10, a level 9, a level 8, a level 1, and a level 2. They even put them in the same order, which is kind of silly. There's one last stip we haven't mentioned, which is maximum number total is 105. Based on theory crafting a few hands just before we came on, it seemed like it wasn't that hard to get under this maximum. For instance, I was thinking about it in terms of 10, 10, 8, 1, 1. The highest number value available for level, which is not legal, but gives us a quick sample. Highest available for level 10s is 29, so 2 level 10s is 58. Level 8s are usually around 25. You can see 1789, for instance, is 25. 9529 is also 25. So, Deli pointed out they're all 25, and he is correct. 58 plus 25 gives us 83. We have 22 points left for our low levels. You can see here in Seto's low levels, one of his is 7, and the other is 15, which is 22. And you can see in Midas's hand, one of them is 10, and the other is 14. That's a little higher, but he built his other cards to be a little lower number value. I do think Hildebrand Manderville is by far the best card in the game. And you can see Seto has picked up his weakest card, right? He's just going to give himself weak things to capture. And I think this is a almost mandatory strategy on this kind of rule set, where you going to start getting ready to input the game, where you find ways to use your weak cards, and this is just a really easy card for the rest of his hand to capture. Though, is it? Because we have this very weird circumstance where Seto, and I think actually he's had the exact same weakness in some prior games in this tournament, has multiple cards that cannot take that from 4, which is a kind of strange effect, right? Like, if, say, Midas was to play 2, 3, 2, 3, and 2, now maybe Seto goes in 3 there safely. Maybe there's other things to do. But if Seto had to go in 4 there, 5, 3, 3, 4, and 4 is kind of covered, right? There's a 9, 5, 2, 9 landing in 7, comboing that. So your only capture that isn't comboed is to go in 4. And this is a very weird circumstance for a low-level card play, right? Dropping your low-level card. He's playing it in such a way that Hildebrand should be a really strong sweeper, but he actually has really limited recaptures from 4. So, anyways, what I was saying was Hildebrand is too strong a card. It is the strongest card in the game. I think, like, pretty objectively, unless you think like AA rares are better. But like, Larsa is the only A98, and it's an A99. And not only has a more powerful 3-number peak than any other card in the game, and A99 is also substantially better than A98. So not only is it that, but it's not even on level 10, right? It's the most powerful card in the game, and it's on level 9. You don't even have to use up a level 10 slot. So I've said in the past, I think it is overpowered, and most rule sets should ban it, especially because it is not a card everyone has access to, and it is such a significant competitive advantage. Incidentally, I completely agree with both players' general hand building of go 10-9-8-2-1. That's very much where I thought was correct as well. I was expecting 10-8-6-4-2 because there was a similar rule set in some tournaments, and I think, I could be remembering wrong, I often do, but I think both players here went for builds that distributed kind of equally rather than top, really overweighting your hand towards the top cards. Now, Midas does something I think is quite interesting, and I think is usually a mistake. I'm not sure it is here, but I think it is very often a mistake, which is, and we'll get to why it probably isn't here, but he's using a high-level card when he is somewhat reliant on low-level cards to take it back, right? His hand may have been designed to have this as the starter, right? He has these low levels to recapture, and then he can keep his high levels for later. The problem is, if your opponent does not capture immediately, but sits threatening captures, then you have to sit on your low levels. Specifically, 3-3-4-4 is your only capture in 6. And you just don't want to keep that in your hand that long, right? If Seto just doesn't touch it for a while and you just have to sit with that card in your hand, and then it lands anywhere other than 6 at the end because you can't control where it lands at the end necessarily. If a card only has one good square, that card is not going to be very good in your hand, and you need to kind of create another good square for it, or make sure it does land in that square, and that's going to be tough to control, which is why I don't like to be reliant on low levels for recaptures. Now, you could easily argue, and many would, that you don't want to be reliant on your high level cards for recaptures because then they can capture and force you to use your high level cards. But this is mostly to say why I tend not to think strong corners are very strong on these split level sets early in the game. Because I think fundamentally you are reliant on one or the other of those situations, and neither of them are what you want to be doing. But counterpoint, here's why I like this move. Seto has no threat to capture an 8. So 3-3-4-4 and 6 is not a card he's going to be reliant on, and Midas has many ways to recapture from 8. So he will not be stuck with 3-3-4-4 for this endgame. Secondly, he's on second turn. On second turn, you are not going to have to use all your low-level cards. You will have to find a way to use at least one of them, but you can, if you see an option that creates serious challenges for the opponent, you can go for it, right? You can play it, and you're not going to be stuck with that many cards. While the first turn player has a real obligation to try to use their low-level cards, the second turn player does not have the same obligation. And third, it creates a plan. Because this card is half safe, Midas threatens to block 8. So I do think this is a reasonable move, but I wanted to say why I often have... No, sorry. Midas threatens to block 6. Yes, because Seto has no threat in 8. Got that reversed. Apologies. Does Seto have a way to set up for 8? Well, there's stuff like 2-9-9, 8, and 5, but that's undesirable. It uses too much power for not a major gain, right? So I don't see immediately an obvious reply from Seto. There's a few kind of concepts that come to mind. One is, if Midas's threat is to go in 6, where can you go such that 6 is a bad response, right? Where could you go such that, like, 6 is just not what Midas wants to be doing? And I'm not sure there's an obvious square that that's the case. I think for that to be the case, you'd really, in this position at least, need a threat in 8. And there is not a clear threat in 8. There's not, I think, an obvious low-cost way to create that threat. A second plan you could come up with is if Midas has weak attacks in 2 or 4, if you have them well covered. For instance, if you look at cards Midas could put in 2 of them have 9s to the right. Seto can combo 9s to the right. So the only capture that Seto can't combo is 2-3-2-3. If you could play in 4 in a way that you cover 2-3-2-3, I guess there's 3-3-4-4 as well. I forgot that card existed. Yeah, that's going to be hard to cover all of. So it's kind of difficult to go or 2 or 4. This might be a very good response. My initial instinct was no, I don't like it, but then I explained why I think I maybe do like it. Deli says Seto might have little ups, Midas is screwed down, Mesmerize too strong. Midas played the starter Deli was looking at, but way too fast for Deli's liking, that makes sense. And Deli mentions 1-7-8-9 in 2 is interesting. So 8-9-8-2 and 4 is covered. So the only card that could go in 4 and not be comboed is 3-3-4-4. And I assume there was some interesting idea against that. Seto has picked up 2-9-9-8. 2-9-9-8, we didn't mention this, actually has like basically pseudo safety in 4. And just playing a card your opponent can't take obviously has real upside. Are there setups against it? I'm not so sure. So that's an option maybe should have considered. And he does go for. Alright. This seems to me maybe a good way to neutralize what I think may have been some real pressure from Midas. Now, the most appealing option in general is for Midas to go in 2. Now, note, Seto still has a capture in 4, or in 6. And so you need this to not sequence such that you're killed by that combo in 6. But it's hard for you to be killed by the combo in 6. You have multiple cards you can put in 8 that wouldn't be comboed through, and also anytime you block 6, your card in 9 is safe. So, kind of the two standard things to do here are go in 6, locking in 9, or go in 2, locking in 1. I think there's more urgency on the card in 1, right? From a kind of a bird's eye view perspective, grabbing the card in 1 seems higher value to me. Now, you can't quite grab it while creating a threat, right? You can have a 2 down or a 4 down. With a 3 down or a 1 down, you'd create a threat in 5. As is, you do not create that threat. But I still think going in 2 should be desirable. But I guess Seto's point is probably he's just going to go in 3 with 1, 7, 8, 9. But that gives up a threat in 6, and it leaves Seto with the 5, 3, 4, 4 for endgame. There's no big setups like 3, 3, 4, 4, and 8, or 2, 3, 2, 3, and 8. You can't set up both 5 and 7 at the same time. You can set up a real threat in 5. That might be useful. Might not. Hildebrand is always going to have some sneaky stuff. Huh. Alright, let's see what other people have to say. Deli says 4 is pretty rude. Yeah, I think 4 was a good move. I think 4 was a good move. So if I was Midas, I would be first looking at 2 and 6. I think there's not really anything desirable to do in 7. Weirdly, 5, 3, 3, 4 covers everything you could put there, as do both the other cards, right? All 3 of the cards cover anything you could put in 7, and between them, I think they cover it pretty well. So I think that's not a very desirable option here. Where else might you look? I didn't like the look of 8. I really think you want to end up in 2 or 6 here. 6, I'm a little worried you could get hit by Mesmerize in 5. That really feels like a position where Hildebrand and 1789 just sweeping side to side. Just 2 perfect cards for those squares. Absolutely could control your hand and leave you with very limited options. So I think 2 makes it less likely you run into a bazillion sweepers. I think 2 is the safer option. Now, obviously, Midas is doing a lot of calculation here, and I am not. But my guess for kind of, if I was ranking moves to make here, I'd have the Wolf, Lobo, I think, and a 3, 3, 4, 4, and 2 at the top of my list. And I'd follow that up with 6. I think there's a very good chance that at least one card in 6 holds. But I wouldn't think it was that easy to figure out which one, if that makes sense. Or like to make sure that the line's held after the opponent goes 5, as well as like what if they go 3, what if they go 2, what if they go 7. There's so many possible moves there that I find those positions, I've talked about this a lot in the past, I find those positions really difficult to calculate, and so I try to play lines that aren't reliant on them working. And I think 2 is often the cleaner path. Now 2, I did think maybe the main problem is 1, 7, 8, 9, and 3. And you need a clear thing to do there. One thing you might have is just take safety in 6 at that point, play Uber in 6. I see some potential problems. So let's say you played Wolf in 2, Omega landed in 3, and you went for safety with Uber in 6. 5-3-3-4 in 5 is a serious problem. Because sure, you can take that and you get captured back, but you actually get comboed back. Your only capture in 8 is 8-9-8-2. And that gets plus walled by Hildebrand's 9 and 1. That is very unlucky and makes this a lot more dangerous. So I wonder if the kind of better option is to maybe start with 3-3-4-4 and 2. And if 3, maybe you can play 2-3-2-3 and 6, which is safe to 5-3-3-4. And also you can same if Hildebrand lands in 5. Maybe there's some idea like that, but this is pretty dangerous. This is not an easy position by any means, and I liked Midas's reply. So my time use would, I think, mostly end up being, if I go in 2 and 1789 lands in 3, do I have something there? Maybe it's going in 5, maybe it's going in some unusual square, maybe it is that 6 works. Right, he's picked up 8982 and he goes in 8. Notably, this sets up something in 5, though it does not set up 7. Notably, it does not block in 9529. So Seto has a lot of options here. One is to just play Hildebrand in 7, just to kind of cash in. Let's note, Seto's only capture in 6 is also his best card for 5. So if he does grab 6, he is giving up potential counterplay in 5. This looks very dicey, though. There are some funny lines. Like, if you imagine something like 5-3-4-4 and 2, say, like, Seto just goes, I'm just going to not interact with that. I have a good card for 5, I have a good card for 7, so I'm just going to play elsewhere while locking in a card. So something like 5-3-3-4 and 2, right? Midas sticks something in 7, like the wolf or whatever, and Seto takes the same in 5, going up 6-4. Midas can then play 1-9-8-9 and 6, and Hildebrand can't capture the 1 from 3. I think that kind of line is very funny. So notably, if 1789 lands in 5, it does not set up a threat in 6. And notably, if 1989 lands in 5, it also does not set up a great thing for Seto to land in 6. Alright, this may well work. This may well hold. It looked scary to me. I dismissed 8 pretty quickly. I thought this was using up a lot of power. There is the question, like, let's say Seto plays Hildebrand in 7. Not a great card for sweeping this endgame, sure. Seto plays Hildebrand in 7. Does Midas have to go 1989 in 5? If he does, he goes up 6-4, but his remaining cards are very weak. His remaining cards are very weak. And it's very plausible to think there's some way for them to be swept, but I'm not seeing it. I don't see it. It's dangerous. Let's see if I've received a message. This is looking bad for Midas. Mesmerize too strong. Yeah, so Dully was saying the same stuff about if 6 is blocked, you go 5. So I don't see the win for Seto here. But I'm also very much not convinced there isn't one. I will say, because I think this is useful to give, kind of what my instincts are, what are the moves I would check first. Can I just go in 7 and win? Right? If I go 7, they're pretty obliged to go 5. Do I have something winning there? They have their low-level cards left at the end. Maybe I can sweep them, right? And something like Mesmerize 6 is... You would have it if you could combo a 3 to the right. There's stuff that's close there. Secondly, can I go in 2 or 6? Either way, I'd want to grab a card. But can I do something that doesn't interact with the paired squares of 5 or 7 while doing something useful? 2 locks in a card of mine. 6 locks in a card that's currently theirs, but again, would be locking in a card. I tend not to check 3 or 5 near as quickly, and I think they're not very appealing here, so I probably would never seriously consider them. I think the squares you want to be checking, you want to be spending your time on, are 2, 6, and 7. There's only one card that really seems plausible in 7. If you're weak to the card in 4, the same is just going to capture so much, it's really hard to come back from, even if you have better sweepers at the end. Like, it's just very unlikely to be winning. So your candidate moves are basically Hildebrand 7, Omega in 6, 1, 7, 8, 9, or something in 2, probably Mesmerize. It's the weakest card in the hand. Even if it's had a lot of good play this game, it no longer is great play on the board. And I think those are the 3 serious candidate moves that you should be checking here. And if a player checks those 3 moves, correctly evaluates those 3 moves, then I think they've done a diligent job on this position. And it's possible you do that and miss a more surprising win. But I think on average, the better time use is going to be to make sure you correctly evaluate those 3 options. And I think 1, 7, 8, 9, 6 is not very appealing because you just have no threat in 5. On the other hand, you are going to be up 6-4. Maybe that works. No, 991A isn't quite good enough a sweeper. It's so close. That's close. So yeah, you want to check those 3. The line I was looking at there was if 1, 7, 8, 9, and 6, they shuck something in 7, and you just play Mesmerize in 5, your 991A is going to sweep the top. You're still up 6-4, but the problem is Uber can land in 3, 1, 9, 8, 9, and Hildebrand can't quite flip that. Could flip any number other than a 9. He picks up Hildebrand. I expect we're going to see Hildebrand in 7. We do. This was one of our critical moves. I think identifying the correct critical moves and focusing your calculation there is a really useful thing to do. Seto is, I think, significantly better than I am at calculating these kinds of endgames. So if he ended up here after spending this much time thinking, there's probably nothing here, assuming this isn't a win, and I'm not oblivious. But I think 1, 9, 8, 9, and 5, and I think Midas manages to hold a difficult first game. Yeah, Deli was looking at ways to delay. Like, what if Seto doesn't jump on the action immediately? But now we should be able to check this more quickly. 1, 9, 8, 9, and 5. The score is currently 6-4 Seto. It would be 6-4 Midas. If 1, 7, 8, 9, and 6, that makes it 5-5. Seto can put either card in 2, and it's a tie. If Seto plays 5, 3, 3, 4, and 6, that makes it 5-5. It flips the card in 5, and Midas can play either card in 2, and he wins. If Seto goes 5, 3, 3, 4 in 2, he ties it up 5-5. Midas can play a plus in 6. He cannot lose there. Similarly, if 1, 7, 8, 9, and 2, cannot lose there. If Seto goes in 3, Midas can always go in 2, and will never lose there. Yeah, so this is a tie, and he plays it. Nicely held by Midas. I think basically every game this... is that true? Maybe Tezuka created some counterplay, but the feel of these matches to me so far has been whether I like the moves his opponents makes or not. Seto is always getting some pressure out of these positions, and it always feels close to breaking through, which is remarkable because I think his opponents are playing very well and they're very good players, and every game feels like he's knocking on the door. But I also think Midas has handled that kind of match very well. I think Midas has some traits maybe similar to me in this way of you can play some slightly but not too dangerous positions, hold them, and kind of wait for an opportunity in the match. And I think Midas is very good, and I think we saw it here with his move in 8, at taking tricky positions and finding some way to force the game into a tie and surviving those. And if you can do that long enough, you will win the match against anyone. And he has shown a really strong ability to do this. Yeah. So Seto goes 5-3-3-4 in 2. Midas plays 3-3-3-3-3-4-4 in 6. Seto will now play 9-9. Sorry, what's his remaining card? I should be able to remember this. So 1-7-8-9 in 3, and 2-3-2-3 will be the last card. And we get another tie. Notably, the Seto Tezuka match was 3 games, 3 ties. We'll see if this match is shorter or longer. But I think this was a good game by both players. I don't think there was a chance that was missed. And yeah. Akiyama says intense. Deli says worth the wait. Nice save an 8, Midas. Well done. To which Midas says thanks. Yeah, Midas has been very good at mitigating risk. And 8 is a move that was hard to find. It is, at least for me, it is difficult to find moves that expend that much power after having played another move that already expended power. And that's part of the reason that on the first move, while I think Midas's move in 9 was a good move, I would have been much more tempted to just take in 2. Not, I mean, I capture a lot, but like not so much because it captures, but because like, I mean, a little bit, but like because I just really, if I can use one of my low level cards, then I'm free on second turn because I don't have to use all 5 of my cards to just use all my good cards for the rest of the game, right? I don't have to hold on to cards after that. And if I start with a high level, I keep having these decisions to make between high and low level cards that are very different types of moves. So my instinct is, can I find a way to use a low level card that does anything at all? Okay, we see changes. Yojimbo would be proud. We've got double Larsa and double 8199 as a pair. The players thinking similarly. Interesting that neither of them have been interested in using multiple cards with A's. We've seen this in the past from Seto, but right, last game Seto used Hildebrand, but he paired it with a 2998. This game they both use Larsa, and they're pairing it with an A9. They like the A9 plus 9-9 corner pair. We can also see pretty quickly this is again a 10-9-8-1-2 build. Who is first turn? Seto his first turn. I think there is a very good chance we will see another weak corner from his low levels. Though Seto also does like going in 5. Now, here, you can't quite create a balanced hand, right? Seto has 3 corners. Midas has 3 corners as well. They have the same 3 corners. But going in 5 tends to be more desirable to most players if you have 4 corners surrounding it, right? One of the benefits of going in 5 is it lets you have a balanced hand for the remaining game, right? And you could say, okay, you could go in a corner and then have 4 corner cards, and that's a balanced hand. It is a balanced hand, but it's facing an unbalanced board, right? Whichever corner you go in, the action faces more. So one of the benefits to going in 5 is it can leave you with a balanced hand that's not really available here. And Seto tends to play weak corners and moves in 5 anyway. I would strongly expect a weak corner here. And the question is, where does he want the action to face? And I think something Seto is really good at is not just like directionality of the hand. You might say, okay, the 3 power cards. One goes kind of upright, but also left. One goes down left, but also up. And one basically only goes down right. And because that card is the 2 powered card instead of 3 power card in the hand, that's probably the most limited in what it can do. And maybe you want to help it along the way by going in 9. And I think that would be reasonable analysis. But I think something Seto is good at is kind of how are cards going to pair down the road. He sees how cards will line up in endgames very, very quickly. And so if he spots something like, I don't necessarily have a good example here, but that like A918 like has a bunch of same walls at the top or whatever, right? In a lot of configurations, then he might play on the bottom. He might still make the same move in 9 that you might make noticing 2993, but he might make somewhat different moves because he is trying to make sure his cards align in useful ways. Huh. It seemed Akiyama thought Midas was winning there with the move in 8. That's surprising to me. Deli says this looks messy. I am on board with that. One thing I might try to do, and clearly they are choosing cards for their low levels that have, plus wall, same wall potential. Interestingly, Seto has gone completely for the double numbers not being next to each other, which is kind of a good call if we see the hands, right? There's just not that many 10s running around. So 3-3-4-4, sure, that covers 10s in some corners a little better, but maybe you just don't need to cover that. Maybe you really need to cover 9s. If we look at the two hands, between the two hands, there's 8 9s by my count. I could be wrong. And there's 2 10s. Pretty sure I'm right on that count. So being able to hit 9s more reliably by having numbers next to each other with 1 gaps is gonna pay off. I'm expecting 3-2-3-2 in 9, though it could go in any corner, and whichever corner he plays, I assume he has found some configuration down the road he likes. One potential downside to these moves is almost any of these weak corners, he actually only has 2 recaptures. It's kind of from the up-down direction. It's perhaps a slight weakness that his 3-4-3-4 is not actually that good at recapturing his 3-2-3-2. It'd be nice if it was. It would give just a little more optionality. You don't want to be reliant on it as your recapture, but it's nice if it's an option, right? So if, like last game, Seto started in 1 and I was thinking maybe Midas could go in 2, one thing that strikes me here very similarly is say Seto plays 3-2-3-2 and 9, right? The move I've been saying. What are his recaptures in 6? It's 8-1-9-9, which is covered by 6-8-8-4, and it's 2-9-9-3, which is covered, though there is a combo back, yes, but is covered by 8-1-9-9 and 3, right? So actually, his ability to recapture himself, given he has all these like powerful tri-numbered cards and it's only a level 1, is much lower than you'd expect, right? Much lower. And I'm not sure if that's because of hand building or that's just how hands end up on this rule set. But it makes weak corners a little more difficult, and he doesn't go for one. In fact, I said he was going to play a weak corner or in 5, and I am proven completely wrong on all fronts. He is instead going to play what is in one sense an aggressive side starter, saying anything you put in 1 or 3, I have covered. But does he? I'm not entirely sure. Because anything, say Midas plays, say 3-3-4-4 and 3, right? Okay, I think Seto goes 1 there. Midas does have not the greatest ups. But if Seto had to go 6 there, both cards he has captures within 6 are controlled by Larsa. Both of them can be comboed back by Larsa. So I think Seto's idea is to go in 1. I think he notes, yes, your Larsa controls my Larsa, but my Larsa controls your Larsa. And if 2993 lands in either 1 or 3, you can't touch it, because you will get comboed into oblivion. But will you? If 2323 is still in the hand, Midas controls Larsa in 7. So here's an idea. 3-3-4-4 and 3, met by 2-9-9-3 and 1. Larsa in 4. What happens? If you take the combo in 7, I combo back, and I think that's very good for me unless I'm missing something huge. So, what do you do? Yeah, you probably have something in 3 or something that doesn't combo in 7, but that's one possible way of playing, right? I think that should be fine. Something like 3-3-4-4 and 3, which is going to be messy, as Dully said. I don't think that's Midas's MO. I kind of think he's going to end up going in 7 or 9. But why? Maybe not. Maybe not. I was talking about this in something I did recently, teaching chess, of like, if you look at 2 players and like one of them has stylistic trait X and another has stylistic trait Y, right? And they're different stylistically, but they're both very strong. And then you look at 2 other players and they're much weaker, and one of them has stylistic trait X and one of them has stylistic trait Y. Like say aggressive defensive or whatever, right? Is strong offensive player in their moves more similar to weak offensive player, or are they more similar to strong defensive player? And it turns out they're just obviously more similar to strong defensive player. That like any 2 strong players are going to have more in common with each other, even if they're stylistically very different, than they will with a much weaker player of a similar style, simply because strength of play is going to dictate so many of the moves that are played. And that's going to be a really defining trait. Turns out Deli was also thinking Midas should maybe go in 3. So, this is one of those great minds think alike, but fools rarely differ situations. Incidentally, people should say the full quote. The full quote of that is great. Like, great minds think alike, sure, whatever, but fools rarely differ is the thing that really brings it home. Of like, you can be thinking on the same page because you're both, you've both solved it, figured something really important out. But also, you can just be going down the same oblivious rabbit hole, right? There's so many ways for you to moronically end up on the same page as someone. It is not a sign of, it could be a sign of different things. It's a good quote. That said, that we are both on the same move here is pretty interesting, I think. But as kind of like similar to last game, I was looking for more interactive stuff to do, and Midas just played a strong corner far away. So like, would it be shocking if Midas played like Larsa in 7? Yeah, I mean that one would be shocking. That one's really well covered. But I do think Midas is looking for early high value out moves, right? He is not. I mean, we only have one game of evidence, but my suggestion from that is he is not seeking how can I use my low level cards and have some impact on the board. He is looking for bigger impact, drawing him to consider his stronger cards. But it's not obvious his stronger cards have any immediate play. So even if that is the case, if I have that read correct, and he uses a high level card again. Yeah. So I think that read was correct, right? He's really looking to make his higher level cards land impactfully. This is a very strange move to me. I don't consider moves in 5 like at all, which led to my complete downfall in a recent game against Akiyama, where he played a move in 5 that just absolutely crushed a side starter of mine. Really fantastic move. Go check out that game. Just excellent move. Completely destroyed me. It also reminds me, it was a non-capture, it was more a setup. It was a move that said, I can go in 5, and anything you can ever play in 1 or 3, I now combo. That's pretty unlikely to be the case here, right? It's kind of hard to play off medium numbers on this rule set with such split cards, right? That 4 facing out is not helping anything combo anything. I would be, very surprised if the 4 facing out was relevant. I guess technically, like, if 3-4-3-4 lands in 7, then 3-3-4-4 gets play, but, like, in practical terms, or vice versa, in practical terms, like, the 4 is just not combo relevant. So this does not strike me as a combo setting up move. I'm also reminded of a move great Sephiroth made. He played like 5 games I caught in the return, all 2 minutes, something like that, maybe less. But I caught a few games he made just at the start of the return, and then he disappeared again. And one of the games he met a side starter just by taking it from 5, and there were so many combo possibilities, and it was a wild game, really complex game. Deli and I were both watching it, going, "What is happening?" And maybe I go, "What is happening?" a lot, but Deli goes, "What is happening?" less than I do, and we were both like, "This is wild." Um, Deli says, "When we're done being intense, can we revisit game 1?" Uh, yeah, we'll see about that. I think Deli has the suspicion that there was something there in game 1. Like there was some path that was promising and not tried. My suspicion is no. My guess is there wasn't, but that's often my guess. And sometimes this has happened quite a bit. Deli will think something is there in a position, and I will think there probably isn't. And I'll check with the solver, and it'll be like everything's a tie. So I'll conclude, okay, I was right, there was nothing. And then Deli will be like, but check this move, and it'll turn out there is only one tie, and it is very weird and hard to find. And so, like, technically, I'm right that it's a tie, but also Deli is definitely right that there was something there. And I would say in those situations, he's more right than I was. Depending on how many moves are left, of course. There are also times when he says that and there was a win, and there are all kinds of times where either of us are wrong. But I think that is a kind of common occurrence. Is Deli finds an idea that maybe, though sometimes it is, but maybe isn't winning, but it is a lot more pressure than looks like as apparent in the position. All right, Seto has picked up a card. It is his low level card. This is very much the natural thing to do. 7, 8, or 9, find a way to use your low level card, and you have really good potential sweepers. Does your hand want to be up down though? Not necessarily. Larsa's 1 has a surprising amount of play just because it means if it ever lands under Midas's Larsa, which maybe is going to lead Seto to go into 8 rather than like 7 or 9, just giving more space for your Larsa to land under an opposing Larsa, though I would guess 7 or 9. 2993 is not very good in these horizontal vertical games, right? It really is going to end up having one direction be useful and one direction not be useful most of the time. He does go 8. Yeah, interesting. So I think he is very much leaving open more possibilities for his Larsa to land under the opposing Larsa. And he also is kind of he has 7 and 9 covered, right? Midas's Larsa cannot land in 7 or 9. Or it seems unlikely, right? You'd have to calculate very specifically to justify it. Because and maybe it can. Actually, in this exact turn, maybe it can, but hard down the road. And if it doesn't land there and those squares are left open, then it's hard for Midas's Larsa to land without Seto's Larsa comboing it. Now, I did say you get comboed, but you can play there this exact turn sometimes, right? You can play something like Midas in 9, because if Seto, and maybe this loses for other reasons, but if Seto combos it from 6, then you get to go 3 and you lock in 6. That is a 2 facing up. That's easy to take. Your card in 3 is safe. It's hard to be that behind in those kind of positions. So, like, Larsa in 9 is playable. But again, just like last game, Midas did not use a weaker card early. So he is going to have to find ways to play this endgame that use his weaker cards. He's going to have to find ways for them to land that are useful. So one move that's kind of interesting is 2-3, 2-3, and 4. Right? I'm just looking at those cards and thinking, what can they do that's kind of useful? And that seems like a move that's kind of useful. Or 3-4, 3-3-4-4, whichever one you think you want out of your hand. But 2-3-2-3 seems more natural, easier to retake with your other low level. It kind of pairs 1 and 7. It pairs 1 and 7, and very interestingly, Seto has no card that has the double capture in both 1 and 7. Even though there's only 2s and 1-4 dangling. There's no card that has the double capture in both those squares. So pairing those two squares is kind of interesting effect. That's one move I would consider here. But I really think, and maybe Larsa in 9 holds, right? Maybe something like that holds. Maybe not that exactly, but something like it. Or maybe Titan in 3, some move like that. But if they don't, right? It, it's hard to play. I find these positions really tough because you have to calculate very exactly on the moves that commit you to a high level card. And there's a lot of game left, right? This is out of the realm of just pure humans calculate everything range. If you identify the main lines correctly, then you can calculate everything. But if you don't identify calculate everything important. But if you have any kind of misfire on which are the key moves, you're not going to check everything. And so you really want to. The usually easier way to tie is to use a low level first, which is why, from Midas' perspective, I really wish he had used a low level card earlier, because now the situation gets really tight. Deli was thinking about Titan in 1. Though he said never mind after. But yeah, I think Titan 1, Titan 3, Larsa 7, Larsa 9 are all candidate moves, and all of them are kind of awkward, right? They're all kind of, I'm walking into stuff and I have to make sure you can't take advantage of it immediately. It's just hard when, like, Seto's hand has so much power left, and while Midas is technically up 6-4, everything on board is vulnerable. The current score doesn't really matter. There's nothing locked in. What advantages does Midas have here to compensate for just having weaker cards for the remaining game? And I think the advantage kind of has to be that 5 is currently his, right? If he has much play here, it has to be somewhat dependent on the fact that, like, it's useful that this card with bigger numbers facing out is his. So, I don't know how useful that is. Yeah, I'd really be looking at 2-3, 2-3, and 4. Maybe I'm now over committed to that move, but I kind of like the idea of making it difficult to take 5. Pairing these squares 1 and 7 that are clumsy for Seto to deal with, right? Seto doesn't have great cards to ever put in those squares. Like, if those squares are left for the last 2, whichever 2 cards Seto has remaining, you can have flipped something he won't be able to take back. And so he's unlikely to sweep you in those spots. You can kind of mitigate the advantage of him having stronger cards. But I'm probably over committed to that idea. I really am skeptical of Midas' move in 5. I mean, last game, it's possible this game he has an easier time tying than he did last game. But it seems to me, if you're going to use a high level card, you really, on an early move, it really needs to do something. Like, what would Seto do in Midas' spot, right? If Seto had that spot, he would have stuck like 2-3, 2-3, and 7. Like, there are so many games where Seto sees something and just plays a weak corner and then wins the game. And that would have been a more useful way. Now, my instinct is find something that does something on board, like going in 3, right? That starts trying to lock something in or set something up. And Seto often finds ways that, like, oh, I'll just chuck this card away from the action, and it turns out it helps everything. Alright, so Midas does use one of his low-level cards. Has he found sufficient use for it? Well, one thing he did do with his move in 5 that does relate here is he now has coverage of 8, 1, 9, 9, and 3 that isn't Larsa, that doesn't get comboed back. So he's saying both, or 2, 9, 9, 3, both of your cards in 3 he covered. He did have a setup with his move in 5. And if I had really been in the setup of the move in 5, maybe this was the natural continuation. That makes some sense. Moves that spring to mind for Seto, Larsa in 9. I'm not sure of it, but 8199 is going to be really good in this endgame, and Larsa is safe in 9. So 8199 is guaranteed to flip a bunch of things. He goes with 2993. He keeps just the better sweepers. He plays very quickly and just keeps maximal sweepers. And yeah, these are two very good cards for the end game. And having better cards is probably worth more than sweeping here. All right, how do you play this if you're Midas? All right, you're currently up 6-4. So I think let's rule out some moves. I think 6 doesn't work. Anything you play in 6, whether you capture or you are safe, but if you safe, you don't capture. After 8199 responds in 3, the score will be 5-5, and Larsa will sweep you. Right? So 6 loses. What about 3? Anything you play in 3, Titan will take, and Titan will take 5. And you're going to be down 6-4. And Larsa kills you. So the answer cannot be in 3 or 6, I think. So the question is, do you have a hold in 4 or 7? Now, the first instinct was Larsa 7. If it's met by Larsa in 4, oh, then you still just lose. 6-4, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4. Yeah. Okay. Can you go 4? Doesn't look like it. I think this is a win. I think Seto's done it. Yeah, he just kept really good sweepers. My first instinct was take the safety in 9, but the problem if you take the safety in 9, which I was going to get to, though I don't know how quickly I'd have gotten to this move, was 2993 is a very clumsy card in that endgame. But if you use it here, yeah. So let's recheck, and I'm going to do my kind of verbal check rather than actually calculating every line because I think it's easier to follow. But any card Midas could play in 6. He can stay 6-4, he can go up 7-3. But if he goes up 7-3, Seto plays a double capture in 3. If he keeps it 6-4, Seto plays a single capture in 3. Either way, it's 5-5, and Larsa will take stuff on the final turn. Will take 2 if necessary, or 1. Either way, it's going to be enough, right? If you go in 3, Titan can always take you, and so that will be a double capture, and Seto will be up 6-4, and Larsa's too strong. So you have to cover the left first. If you go in 4, whatever you put in 4, Seto can take with Larsa. And it's going to be 5-5. There's potential combos here, but you never have combos back, so the combo chains don't really matter. It's going to be at least 5-5, right? And 8199 is going to get more captures than you on the right. If Larsa could capture the card 9 and be safe, there would be holds there. But yeah, Titan's going to sweep you. And so that leaves us with moves in 7. And if you play something like 3-3, 4-4, and 7, or Larsa in 7, the problem is Seto doesn't even need to use Titan there. Seto can use Larsa in 4, double capture, he's up 6-4. You only have single captures back, and 8199 sweeps you. So I believe Seto has done it. And I think... No, I guess he can't quite. I was going to say, I think Midas is trying for the 9-1 loss. But this... But this looks like it's over. The remaining card will be 8199. Seto 6-4 Midas, and Seto takes the title. I think this is much deserved. I think Seto played fantastically throughout. Yeah, nothing, nothing really I can criticize in Zeto's play the whole tournament. Excellently won tournament, well deserved. Really cool to see the, you know, one of the, I think, four tournament all time, Mount Rushmore types. Uh, the three of us who are back have now all won a tournament in the return, and that's nice to see. I really do like seeing that. And yeah, Seto played so good. I'm gonna have to look back on these games again later because I think he found pressure out of moves that looked so innocuous to me. I think he's doing some things just at such a high level, and very deserved champion. I'm gonna pause the video so I can go say congratulations and stuff, and then I'm gonna come back because I want to talk about legacy stuff and rankings and all that nonsense. So if you're not interested in that, definitely end the video now. But I have a few things I want to say there that I think are interesting. You know what? Let's start with a quick solver check. So in this position, after 2, 9, 9, 8, and 4, I thought that was an interesting position. Midas has 3 ties in this position. 3. It's very high pressure. One of them is 2, 3, 2, 3, and 7, which I did not remotely consider and find pretty entertaining. What's the move here? You have to find exactly this in advance. Okay, so that's a very difficult one. It turns out there is a tie in 2 here. What's the tie in 2? But you have to pick the right card. It's 3, 3, 4, 3, not 2, 3, 2, 3. Huh. 2, 3, 2, 3 loses to 5. Where the 2 cards sweep. Interesting. But 3, 4, 3, 3, 4, 4, for some reason, does not. We're not going to get into that. But that's to say 2 was very dicey, and the move Midas played. So incredible tie by Midas. Fantastically found. There is not a win here. Seto gave only 1 tie, but it is pretty straightforward. And we finished the game. Okay. So that's game 1. Game 1, really well played tie. Really well held by Midas there. Fantastic move. He should be proud. Though I do think he has to find ways in these split level sets to use his weaker cards early. I think, the less you do that, the more you have to find these fantastic ties. Now, let's see what the second game looks like. Just very quick checks here. Starter in 2, very interesting. Deli and I wanted 3, 3, 4, 4, and 3. So we'll have the solver tell us in a bit if that ties or loses. Looking like it ties. Yeah, alright, so that one ties. Midas plays in 5, which I guess is also a tie. Just a really difficult one. So one thing you can immediately tell here is the move Deli and I liked. Seto has 11 ties in response and 17 losses. The move Midas played, Seto has 23 ties in response and 5 losses. And while this isn't always indicative, it usually tells you this is a move that's going to put you in trouble, right? This is a move where the opponent can choose which way to attack, and you have to be very precise. I was close. I was wrong here. There is 1 tie. I was kind of hung up on this move, and this move doesn't work. Though, that's a somewhat unusual response for the only winning move. But it turns out it was the right idea, and that card in 6 was the way to do it. Now, why are these different? Well, I would suspect that in the kind of comparable line, there's no safety in 7, while against this there was safety in 9. But this is really hard to differentiate. But I think it is telling that you had to find a way to use one of these cards, and I think I was actually much more closer than I expected to be, of trying to pair squares in a way that Seto's cards would be a little bit clumsy. Though here 8199 looks very good. So my worst move, to me, seems more natural, but of course, any move you find seems more natural. So incredibly tough position to save after 3, 4, 3, 4, and 8, and after Midas goes 2, 3, 2, 3, and 1, trying to find a way to use his weakest card. Seto correctly plays the win very quickly in 9. Seto's just so fast and good at this, and it's over. So, excellent tournament won by Seto. Now, let's move on to some legacy nonsense. We're going to head over to a notes site so I can sort of copy paste if you want to follow along. No, don't send me this. I understand. Okay. I was thinking, what can we do to what can we do to discuss Seto's win, where he stands? Because Seto has 5 championships now. He is the 4th person to ever reach 5 championships. But I think it's even better than it looks, right? Seto is obviously one of the 4 greatest players of all time. He has a serious case for being number 1. And I was thinking about that, and I thought, you know what? Let's compare him, if he wins, to Yojimbo. Let's compare Seto and Yojimbo's tournament record. And I think we would all agree tournaments aren't everything, and I focus on the tournament data because that's the thing that's clearly enumerable. But, there's other stuff, and there's people care a lot about, mystique and who felt invincible to them and all that. But I think this is a really interesting comparison. And so I want to focus on, today, Seto versus Yojimbo in a bunch of categories. And so we're going to compare Seto to Yojimbo to Oats. And Oats is going to be our stand-in for Yojimbo, despite having played significantly less time, because Seto plays like every 3rd tournament, had actually played more tournaments than Seto has done. So I want to compare what has Seto done, what has Yojimbo done, and if we prorate Seto's stats, if we say, okay, if he maintains the same rate and plays the tournaments to catch up to Yojimbo, where would he land and how does that compare? And I think, if Yojimbo played 36 major tournaments, if Seto had played, 18, right, and was at the same pace, well, if someone does it for twice the time, it's hard to compare that, right? If someone's 70% for 3 tournaments for 70% for 20 tournaments, the 20 tournaments is far more impressive. That is a very difficult number to maintain. But given Yojimbo has played 36 tournaments and Seto has played 31 tournaments, I think we mostly know who both these players are. And it's not different enough that I think it's unfair to say, hey, Yojimbo played 5 more tournaments, but we can say, if Seto had played those 5 tournaments, where would he likely end up? So our first number is going to be tournaments played, and Seto's 31, and Yojimbo's 36. And Oats, of course, is 36, because Oats is Seto if he had also played 36. All right. Champs. How many championships do they have? Well, Seto is 5, and Yojimbo was the first player to ever win 7, though 2 other players have since caught up. If we assume Seto wins at the same rate, he ends up at 5.8. So yes, Yojimbo has won more tournaments, and while it is possible for Seto to catch up in his next 5 tournaments, it is certainly unlikely. Yojimbo, higher rate of tournaments won. And this is going to continue for a bit, right? We're going to come around to where I think the argument for Seto is, but no one has really racked up icons quite the same way Yojimbo has in results. Seto has 9 finals, Yojimbo has 13, and Oats has 10.5. Again, Yojimbo's ahead, and Yojimbo is ahead even if we assume Seto continues to make finals at the rate he has and plays 5 more tournaments. What about semis? Well, semis, Seto is 13, Yojimbo is 16. This one's close, but Yojimbo still has the lead. Note, Yojimbo has the record or is tied for the record in championships, finals, and semifinals. So, no one's ahead in these categories. Though there's a couple people tied. What about quarterfinals? Well, Seto now is 15, Yojimbo is 21, pro rate is 17.4, the record is now 24 for Delhi. Just want to mention when someone is ahead of these two, which is almost always going to be Delhi. But again, if we look at kind of the deep runs in tournaments, Yojimbo's ahead in championships, finals made, semifinals made, quarterfinals made, all that. Yojimbo was a machine at that. But there's a couple other things going on. What if we look at just wins? How many games you won? Okay, Seto's at 92 and Yojimbo's at 103. But for the first time, if we say, okay, what if Seto had played as many tournaments? For the first time, Seto comes out ahead. The record is again Delhi. For the first time, Seto comes out ahead, and this is kind of interesting. because this means Seto is winning his games at a higher rate. So why doesn't he have icons and other things at the same rate if he has a higher win, if he's winning more games per tournament, which will lead, as we'll see, to a higher win rate. And so the first thought here is, okay, maybe Seto lost his games at the wrong time, right? Maybe he's really good at losing right before the icon or something like that. But it starts to be a little interesting, and I think we'll get a little more into it. But one other thing I want to do is V winners. Seto has 30 wins versus winners. Yojimbo has 28. This again, neither of them have the record. But even though he's played less, Seto has played winners more than Yojimbo did and has won more against them. No, he hasn't played them more, but he has played them less. And despite playing against other winners less, he has won more games than Yojimbo has because he has a significantly higher win rate versus other winners. And so again, I think you look at kind of some of these raw numbers and you're like, okay, Yojimbo's ahead in every category. But you start looking at other stuff, and there's a case. There's a case. I also think I think the big question here becomes, like, Seto has played over so many different eras and been so successful in different eras. And Yojimbo played a kind of a shorter run of time. But I think Yojimbo played what was generally a tougher era. I think more challenging opposition. But with this kind of verse winners record, there is a question of who actually has played tougher opposition. Let's look at some more stats. What about win percentage? Win percentage. Let's make more space here, actually. Make this look a little cleaner. Champ. All right, we won't fill this all in. Win percentage. Seto, after this win, is at 78.0, and Yojimbo is 76.3. Close. We don't have to prorate because 78% will stay 78%. Close, but Seto does have the higher win rate, right? Seto has a higher rate of wins to losses. One question is, what about early in a tournament versus late? Well, in the early rounds of a tournament, meaning leading up to an icon, Seto wins 80.2%, which is ridiculous. How much does Yojimbo win? 78.8. So Seto is winning early rounds at a higher rate, yet he has fewer icons. And the main reason for that, the clear reason for that, is a lot of Seto's tournaments are from earlier eras, right? Yojimbo is playing when tournaments were mostly 6 rounds and going down to 5, and Seto is playing when there were regular 7-round tournaments as well as 6-round tournaments, and a few of the 5-round tournaments, but not so many of those. So Seto is having to play more games for each of his icons, but he's actually winning those early rounds at a higher rate. What about the late rounds? What about, in the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals? Well, Seto's at 73%, and Yojimbo's at 72%. Again, these numbers are very close. I don't think, when someone's like a percent or two away over samples of, 130, 150 or something, this is a couple wins either way. This is not some massive difference, but it's very interesting to me that Seto wins more early in tournaments, and Seto wins more late, leading to Seto winning more overall. All by narrow margins, but it's interesting, right? It's interesting. All right, a couple more stats here. We have win rate versus winners. Unsurprisingly, Seto is ahead here. He's at an insane 75% versus other winners, while Yojimbo is at a very strong, but not near as strong, 60.9%. And if we do versus non-winners, Seto is at 81.7%, and Yojimbo's at 86.7%. And this is the first win percentage category where we see Yojimbo pull ahead, but it's not against the very best players. It's against many very, very good players, but not the very best players. That Yojimbo is the more consistent and dominant winner. And so I think you look at this section, right? And you're like, okay, it's close. These are maybe the 2 best players ever, 2 of the best 4. And it's close, but Yojimbo has more accomplishments, right? And in fact, One stat I like is achievement, which weights each kind of tournament result, and in that, Yojimbo has the most ever and has a clear lead, right? You add up kind of achievement gives each championship's worth 1,000 points. Each finals is worth 500. Each quarter is worth 250. Each semis is worth 250. Each quarter is worth 125. We can quibble about weights, but I think it's a nice, quick way to add up just how many runs did you have and how far did you go. And, Yojimbo is a clear lead here. We just look at how far you went in tournaments and who did it more often. You come out with, Yojimbo, clearly. But you start looking at these win percentage numbers and you go, wait a second. What if Seto is a little stronger, but played in an era with more rounds per tournament? And my first instinct there is to go, okay, but I think Yojimbo did play in a tougher era. But the win percentage versus winners versus non-winners is the thing that really gives me caution on that thought. Because I think Yojimbo did play in a tougher era, but it doesn't follow that he played tougher opponents because brackets are somewhat randomized. And Seto also played through lots of different eras, and it starts to be a thing of like, maybe you have to look at the brackets to really compare. Head to head, these two players have played each other, and Yojimbo leads 2-1. But I would note they are 1-1 in pure open, and the second win for Yojimbo was in a TTAC finals where Seto won the open and Yojimbo won twice in closed. So even that seems to me about as even as you can get. I think these are very similar tournament players. So here's another way of looking at it. Let's make a little more space. What if we looked at their actual just different eras and compared them? So Seto early. This is early Seto. From the year 03 to 05, he went 9-6 in tournaments. He made 1 finals, and his ELO rating performance, I think ELO is a really good way to capture both win rate and strength of opposition, is 2134. And we compare to Yojimbo early, and Yojimbo, this is going to be 08 and 09. He goes 20-10. He plays more, but there were more tournaments at the time, with a 22-26 performance. And I think, Seto gets 1 finals at the end of that run. Yojimbo gets at least 1 finals in this run. I think you have to look at these numbers and you have to be like, the ELO says it clearly. Yojimbo came in and was more dominant early. All right. What about Seto late? Seto's peak is 07-08, so that's going to be in the middle. But this is a huge swath of time. But again, Seto skips 2 out of every 3 tournaments. So this is not such a strange time period to take for him. From 2010 to 2024, he's gone 37-12. And I didn't update his ELO performance for this last tournament because I'm lazy. But it was 23-34, not including the games from this last tournament. So it's certainly higher now. And we're going to compare that to Yojimbo's middle period, where Yojimbo, this is from 10 to 11. So some overlap here. And he's going to go 31-10. If we compare these records, they are very similar. Yojimbo would need to go 6-2 in remaining 8 games. That's 75%. They're both almost exactly on 75%. This is very similar. And an ELO performance of 23-08. Given that I haven't yet updated this 23-34, I think Seto's late period, similar number of games, lines up nicely against Yojimbo's middle period, right? I think the early, we have to say, Yojimbo jumped out early. But Seto's post-prime period is, I think, a little stronger than Yojimbo's pre-prime period. But we have one more combination. What about both in their absolute primes? So let's do Yojimbo's prime first. Give us a baseline. Yojimbo's prime is 2012 to 2015. Over that period, he goes an insane 49-10, right? The last period the first period he was winning 2-1. The second period he's winning 3-1. Here he's winning 5-1, right? He's like averaging a 6-round tournament finals run. He's averaging that, right? For an ELO performance of 24-17. Pretty good. All right. What about Setos? And I'm not setting you up for like Setos to be better than that. I'm just saying these strike me as such comparable players. So Seto's peak is 06 to 08, 3-year run. Over that run, he goes 40-7. So he would need to go 9-3 or 75% to catch up. Seto's win percentage, slightly fewer games played over this 3-year span, slightly higher win rate, and an ELO performance of 2385. It's close, and ratings early on are lower than ratings later, though I tend to think generally the site was stronger and that the ratings later are basically earned, but you could argue that either way. But I think this is really close. I think you line up their periods, you're like, advantage Yojimbo, advantage Seto. Very close, right? Very close. And this number should be higher, so something greater than 2334. Probably it's more in the 2350 range, something like that. And you look at these numbers, and you're like, okay, Seto has the achievements, but Yojimbo has the achievements, but Seto has the higher win rate. And especially, Seto has the higher win rate against the best. Overall, I think kind of another thing you can do is you can just take every game they played, career ELO, every game played, and Seto comes out at 2359 performance for every tournament game he has played. And Yojimbo comes out at 2350. Incredibly close again, right? Like a margin like this, someone is going to be in the lead, but margins like this are just too close to say anything remotely definitive. It's a win or loss here or there, right? Just one. Easily does it. What about peak ELO? Seto peaks at 2459, which is basically after this tournament, incidentally, he's right around 2450 again, so he might easily start upping his peak soon. And Yojimbo is at an all-time record, 2530 for his peak. So, in the end, like, my instinct and my leaderboard standings tend to say this, but, like, I think Yojimbo at his very best puts him ahead here. But I think it's really close, and there's a really compelling argument in this data for Seto. Because he does win more. He wins more against the best players. His peak is a higher win rate, and if you think the 06 to 08 crowd is a stronger set of opposition than 12 to 15, then these numbers wouldn't mean much to you, and you would take Seto's prime. Yeah. It's really close, right? Like, these are two obviously unbelievably good players, and I think they have very similar resumes after this Seto win. I think this makes it just extremely close. So, all right, that's where I wanted to babble about. Hopefully that was vaguely interesting to someone. Great games. Seto played phenomenally the whole tournament. Just, I think, easily the best player in the tournament based on their games in this tournament. And yeah, very much deserved the win. And I am looking forward in the future to going back and looking at some of these games. I am delighted to have gotten a Delial tournament win on the record. I'm delighted. Obviously, Tezuka's was great. And I do need to go back and look at some of Tezuka's as well. But I'm really delighted to have gotten a Seto win on the records. Just to be able to go back and look at these games and to have followed as many of them as I could. And just look at how powerfully he plays with moves that seem innocuous to me. Because I think that's really cool and worth exploring and thinking about. And maybe we should all be playing more like Seto.